Today's a special day. While it is International Women's Day, and a very happy International Women's Day to all our spectacular women out there in the universe, today is also special for a couple other reasons that I am super excited to share with you guys, and that I will be sharing with you in like literally the next 30 seconds. But first, roll intro. I know a lot of my existing subscribers probably know my face and who I am, but for the new faces that are watching this who may not know who I am, here's a quick intro about me that I'm gonna try and knock out in like 60 seconds or less. Here we go. So, like I mentioned earlier, my name is Cameron. I'm a full-time photographer, videographer, and media specialist who's been working as a professional for over 8 years now. I do everything from weddings, commercials, events, real estate, music videos, obviously YouTube, and much more. I originally started YouTube as Cam Brown Vlogs, and I mainly posted videos showcasing my travels and adventures with friends and family. Eventually, I decided to merge my business and my passion with my current YouTube channel, which leads us to where we are now. The main purpose of the channel revamp is to create a resource for you to come and learn photography and videography and give you some free insight from all the experience that I've gained to date. In addition to that, I'll also be sharing some fun life experiences and documenting my journey as a creator. If that sounds cool to you, then you can go ahead and click that subscribe button below to help support my channel and keep me growing. Okay, so now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's hop into the main topic of this video, which is learning our basics for editing. So I've got a question here in my inbox from my friend Megan. Megan hit me up a little bit earlier in February saying, hey, I need some editing tips. Is there anything that you have for me as a beginner? What can I focus on? How to find my style, or how do I find my style? Anything and everything. So she's basically saying, where do I begin? How do I start this thing? What do I do? Great question, Megan. This is definitely something that I was wondering when I was first starting as a creator, and there were a lot of questions running through my head. So I'm gonna do my best to try and break these down in a very general sense and make it very easy to consume. Let's go. Okay, so when we're starting out with editing, the first thing that I would recommend doing is obviously picking an editing program to use. That can be a little bit of an overwhelming task considering there are so many editing programs available now. I mean, we've got stuff for the iPad, we've got things on our phone. They're everywhere and anywhere that you have any type of computer. That being said, if I had to narrow things down and pick two to recommend, I would probably go with two of the most popular that I know of, which is Final Cut Pro and Premiere Pro. Now, at first glance, picking between both of these could be a little overwhelming. So I broke down a few key things to keep in mind and to consider when you're making your choice. The first thing that we're gonna take into consideration is pricing. When it comes to payment, Final Cut Pro is a one-time payment of $300 up front, while Premiere Pro is going to be an ongoing monthly subscription starting as low as $20 per month. That being said, Final Cut Pro is technically cheaper overall since you only have to buy it once, but there's no denying that Premiere Pro has a much more affordable startup price. In terms of accessibility, Premiere Pro is going to be way more flexible considering it works on both Windows and Mac computers, while Final Cut is exclusively an Apple program. Having used both editing systems, if I had to give my input on them, it would be this. Final Cut Pro is a little bit easier to pick up and way easier for people who are just getting started into editing, especially if you're coming from something like Windows Movie Maker or iMovie. When it comes to Premiere Pro, it was a little bit more of a learning curve like I mentioned earlier. However, I currently use Premiere Pro and I love it. It gives me way more flexibility and control over all different types of aspects in my project, which again, for me personally, is super, super important. The best thing to do when you're choosing is to review all of the things we just talked about, take into consideration your own situation, and make your decision based off of that. Okay, so we picked out our editing system, and now we want to move on to our next step, which is making sure that our gear is up to snuff to handle the things that we're going to be editing. A couple baseline things that you'll want to pay attention to when you're picking out a computer for your editing are going to be your processor, your memory or your RAM, your GPU or your graphics card, and last but not least, your storage. Starting off with storage, guys, if we can, we always want to try and get SSD storage. And for those of you who don't know what SSD storage is, SSD just stands for solid state drive. It's a type of hard drive that goes in your computer. It basically means that it has no moving parts in there, and it's going to make it much more durable, but overall, and most importantly, it's going to make things faster. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that HDD storage is unusable, but if we can, eventually we do want to try and move towards that SSD storage to make things better in the long run. In terms of a processor or a CPU, as long as you've got a quad core or 8 core machine running with a decent gigahertz speed of about 2.0 or higher, you should be in good shape for editing your footage. For RAM, we want to try and aim for a baseline minimum of 8 gigabytes. 8 gigabytes of RAM is going to be sufficient for editing 1080p footage if that's what you're working with. If you're working with higher quality footage, like say 4K footage, then 16 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of RAM will be a bit more appropriate for that task. Touching on GPU last, essentially your graphics card is going to help speed up a lot of the processes that your CPU or processor is already handling. This is going to come into play once you start getting into programs using a lot of heavy graphics and everything, but again, as long as you have a strong CPU as your core, you should be good to start. Okay, now that we've gotten our editing program picked and our gear all squared away, let's jump into some key things to focus on when you're starting out with your editing. The first and probably the most important thing to do is to start slow and really learn the basics of your program. And when I say basics, I mean all the basics. Learn how to import footage, how to export a project, where all your basic functions are located, how to cut a clip, how to put things on the timeline, etc., etc., etc. I always like to tell people to start by learning hotkeys, since hotkeys have a lot of the basic and most frequently used functions already programmed into them. Once you've spent a good bit of time getting comfy in your new editing program, it's time to take it a step further and begin developing a workflow. This is key, and it's something that I wish I would have established so much earlier in my career, guys. When I first started, I kind of just threw things into the timeline and played around until I got something that I was happy with. And I can speak from personal experience, this is 100% not the way to approach things. A good editing workflow provides structure and organization to how you edit, which is going to significantly speed up your process and make you much more efficient overall. I would highly advise spending some time to work out a process to apply and follow, or checking out other creators to get tips and take notes on things you can add into your own workflow. I'm currently working on a video that showcases various aspects of my own personal workflow, so once it's finished, I'll link it up above so you can go check it out. And finally, guys, once we have our flow developed, the most important part of continuing to improve as an editor is just practice, practice, practice. The more projects that you edit, the more you're going to be able to practice the skills that you learn, tweak your process, and improve yourself overall. Just remember, always be patient with yourself as you continue to learn, and try to make the process as fun as possible. Okay, so we've learned the basics of our editing program, we have a solid workflow developed, and now we can pour the rest of our time into developing our own personal style. This, in my opinion, is probably one of the most fun parts of editing, considering you really just get to explore and figure out which editing style works best for you. It's literally a chance to fully express yourself and flex your creativity. That being said, if I had to break down finding your own style, I guess the best advice that I could give is to continue to experiment and be open to trying new techniques and things. Spend some time figuring out what really grabs your attention and allows you to have the most fun in post-production. And then from there, just key in on those aspects and keep incorporating them into your videos. The biggest thing is just staying versatile and not being afraid to try new things whenever they come up. Ultimately, as you continue to do this, your style will naturally develop and shape itself over time. Okay guys, so that is it for today's video. Hopefully some or all of that information we just went over will be helpful in getting you started as a beginner editor. Again, this video is just supposed to be an overview of getting started, so if you are looking for more in-depth breakdowns, let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to get a follow-up video made for you. Other than that, again, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, please subscribe to support the channel and receive more content like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.